it's Regan Yan and Justin Theng from SAS again, and today we're going to talk about how customer analytics empowers creativity.
That's right. Hi, everyone. Regan, we were talking about that scene in The Lion King where Scar is like, clawing Simba before he falls down. And he goes, what does he say? He goes,
yeah, he says, long live the king, right? The king is dead, long live the king.
Yeah, long live the king. And then he goes, rah, and he lets him drop. For so long, creativity and ideas has been the king in marketing, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think, people have been predicting the death of creative agencies for 30 years. I mean, honestly, creative agencies seem like Lazarus to me, right?
Yeah, and I was a creative director for many, many, many years in
Right.
well-known creative agencies, and I remember one time when I started in my own digital agency, and we were just growing, and we had maybe 10 people at the time, and I left the office and I was walking out through, we were at WeWork, and somebody was doing a presentation, and he said, "Data is the death of creativity." And I was mortified. I was like, what? I can't believe you said that. What a ridiculous thing to say. Anyway, what's your thoughts on this? Because you were saying that this is the current mindset.
Yeah, I mean, people like, I've said this before, but people see creativity and analytics as almost opposing forces, and then they're absolutely not. The power of analytics is to empower much greater creativity. The difference is sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I'm saying I agree. Yeah.
Right. The difference is that traditional creativity is around one big idea. Like
in ads, the platform idea.
Right.
The big idea, and then you have all the small ideas off it. Yeah, that's right.
Because of the medium, right? So,
correct.
Whereas analytics inspires, lots of small ideas.
That's right. It's just a different kind of problem.
Correct.
Like we used to say in billboards, for example, you can't put a big idea in a billboard because somebody driving past is going to read it and you have 4 seconds to get your idea across. 4 seconds. So it's not a big idea there. It's a small idea. And it's the same in Facebook advertising. You've probably got less than 4 seconds to get your message across. So that's the constraint. The constraint is 4 seconds, find a solution, go. And that's where creativity clicks in.
Right. And the fact that, because of the digital media, we don't have to have one execution anymore.
Yeah. So, and you don't need to have this big wacky idea that's going to like pull on emotions and heartstrings because you just don't have that time. The constraints are different.
Right. And it's and you with the digital media and understanding every individual customer who sees that, you can actually have something that is more tailored to that customer, to their state of mind, to the to the channel.
Now, Regan, I know that from previous chats that you've got you have like hotels and ski fields in Japan, right?
Right.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that house? This reminds me of that house in Kobe, Japan, where it's built in an alleyway and it's this modern house. But I think it's like the perfect metaphor for what we're talking about. It's that creativity flourishes in constraints. So as an example, this house, it's so narrow. It's narrower than what we would call a townhouse in Australia. It's just an alleyway and it goes straight up and it's made of timber, but the inside is beautiful. It looks so beautiful. And it's like such a mastery of creativity, given the tight constraints, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. And we've discussed this, between ourselves before. And it's really, it's an idea that I'd never really thought about. I'd never. I mean, when you told me about it, I thought, oh, that's odd. How can constraints, inspire creativity?
Yeah.
But if you think it through, in your example in the house in Japan, and the way the Japanese think generally, it really does. There's I can't count the number of times that I've said to somebody, you've got a blank sheet of paper, you can do whatever you like, and they sit there with this sort of stunned, terrified look.
Yeah, it's too broad. It's too broad. But if you give them some like paddle
Right.
pop sticks and say, build a bridge. Then they go,
Right.
now I can be creative. One of my heroes, Rory Sutherland, had this great idea for trains. People were complaining that the train rides from France to England were taking too long. So these engineers were coming up with like hundreds of $1 million ideas on how to improve the train speed by a factor of like 1% or 0.5%. And he comes from this, he's from Ogilvy, and he comes with this alchemy point of view, and he goes, look, why don't you use that 100, $500 million or whatever, hire all the best models in the world and serve like Chateau de Pompe or whatever it is, champagne throughout the carriage, and people will be begging you to slow it down.
Right.
So the everything is perception, right? But there was this great example of Lidl in Ireland, the Lidl app that we talked about. COVID has been the perfect example of restrictions. Yeah.
Well, it has, because
mind the pun.
I mean, one of the things that COVID has done is it's forced us to think about solutions really quickly in panic.
Yeah.
Right. In a panic mode. So, we've had to, solve problems that, we might have wanted to take, months or, whatever to solve, but because everybody's in stress, we have to solve these things really quickly. And I think there's been some really, interesting ideas that have come out of the need to solve problems quickly. And the little problem is interesting because, they started communicating with their customers about when their stores were empty, so it was safe for them to come into the stores.
Yeah, Lidl is like I think it's like an IKEA, right? And they use the WhatsApp channel so that, and this is just an example. We've all experienced it, where you can text in and find out when's the best time to come in.
Right.
But without COVID, without the restrictions, that would have never transpired, because that would have been a solution looking for a problem.
Well, without COVID, it would have been like, I'm telling you when my store's empty, and customers are going, yes, so what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll come when it suits me. Whereas now it's important to know when it's empty.
or more importantly, I mean, in the, pre-COVID, when our stores were empty, we had to offer a discount for people to come in when stores were empty, right? So, hairdressers were always cheaper on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Because
and pizza.
Right. Whereas now, that sort of, the empty store is the precious commodity.
There you go. So we've in 5 minutes proven that customer analytics empowers creativity, not kills it. Doesn't replace creativity. Well, there you go. Who knew? Well, I mean, I guess if I could just say one last final thought, working as a creative for a lifetime ago in advertising, it was very difficult to be creative unless you had a really good brief. There are a couple of ways that people express this. If you're going to cut down a tree and you have 4 hours, spend 3 hours sharpening your axe. Or a solution is only as good as the problem it rubs up against. Or if you're trying to find a solution, spend most of your time trying to understand the problem. So these are all ways of saying that a really good brief is important. And a good brief is based on strategy, and a strategy is based on research. But if you think about what that is, that's data. So now we just don't have to run focus groups to get that data. We've got data in our hands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the actual numbers, but I suspect the use of focus groups has come down dramatically over the last sort of 10 to 15 years.
I'd say so. Because now you've got global focus groups. You could run, going back to our conversation previously about CBOs and Facebook algorithms, you can run product market fit, you can run message market fit to millions and millions of people for like $100, $200, $1,000, whatever. But compared to a focus group, you get the answers really quickly.
Well, what's the in terms of capturing research, what's the difference between an opinion and customer data? Volume, right? If you've got
it's almost better to have the snap decision. I think that's a better than having somebody sit in a room and think about it and be influenced by other people as well.
Right, because that's their fast thinking response.
Yeah, exactly.
Is more likely to be, that's how they respond to your advertising, right? Or your
it's impulsive, correct? Yeah, or it's curious.
People don't sit there and think deeply about your problem for an hour before they buy your product.
Yes. So for all the listeners and the watchers out there, if you would like to get more creative with your campaigns for better cut through, you need better analytics. Speak to Regan and I. That's the call to action.
Thanks, Justin.
Always be selling. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Regan.